Welcome to Woodcutter Supply. My name is Chuck. This is tool tip number 10. What I'd like to show you today is a proper way of sharpening your chain on your chainsaw. Some of the tools we're going to be using today is a Stump Vice. This will enable you to sharpen your chain out in the field by holding the saw and the bar steady. If you're not in the field but you're at home in your shop and you have a vise, that's another way you could do it. Just clamp the bar in the vise while you're sharpening. That'll help hold the saw steady. Another tool we're going to be using is the file guide. That will allow you to sharpen the teeth at the proper angle and also hold the file at the proper height on the tooth. Very important. Another tool we have here today is the Raker Guide. That will allow you to file your rakers down in relation to the tooth to the proper setting, which is approximately 25 thousandths. Then we have a flat file to file those rakers down. Have a hammer and a scrunch. You would use this to adjust your chain, for example. That's a good tool to have. All these tools are available on our website. They're also available in kit form. Oregon makes a nice kit right here, depending on the size chain that you have, that would include all the tools we just talked about today. Again, this is available on our website, and I highly recommend it for accurate filing of your chainsaw chain. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the Stump Vice, something again to hold the saw steady. Take your saw, insert your bar, hold it up a little bit, clamp this right here. That'll hold your chainsaw steady and your bar steady and enable you to rotate your chain while you're sharpening it. I recommend using a rag, by the way, because you could cut yourself very easily on these chains. First thing I usually do is mark one of the teeth. And I just take a magic marker and mark the tooth so I know where I started. I usually start from this side here. You want to take your file guide and you want to file the tooth on the opposite side from you. You're going from the inside out. The advantage of the file guide is it holds the file at the proper height on the tooth and the proper angle. There's markings on the file guide that show you the angle, the proper angle the file has to be in relation to the chain and the bar. This happens to be 30 degrees, so I'm going to lay this on the bar, make my line on the tool parallel with my bar, and I'm going to do 2 or 3 strokes like that there. Do the same amount of filing on every tooth. You want every tooth to end up exactly the same length. If you don't, teeth end up different lengths. When you go to cut a piece of wood, that cut could go like this. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that. So it's important you do the same number of strokes on every tooth. So we'll go to tooth number 2, do the same thing. Make that line parallel on the gauge with the bar. 1, 2, 3. And then continue on. 1, 2, 3. When you get down into here, just rotate your chain forward. When you come back to your mark, go to the other side and do exactly the same thing. Once your teeth are all sharpened, what you want to do is you want to file your rakers. What the rakers do is they determine how large a slice of wood the cutter is going to take every time it passes through the log. What happens sometimes is people will sharpen their tooth on the chain, or sharpen the chainsaw chain all the way around, and it still won't cut. The problem being is they never adjusted the rakers. Once you finish sharpening the chain, a lot of people think that's the end of it, and they're all set to go, and they go to cut a piece of wood and it won't even cut. Well, why is that? Well, the reason being is most people aren't aware of the fact that your tooth, as you sharpen it back, the tooth is slanting back or down. So the tooth actually gets lower and lower the more you sharpen it. What you've got to do is you've got to adjust the raker. You've got to adjust the relationship between the top of the raker and the very top of the cutting tooth. And how do you do that? Well, they have what they call a raker gauge, which has a step in it. And that step is around 25 thousandths. On some of your smaller chain, it would probably be 25, maybe a little bit less. Some of your larger chain, that step may even be larger. But in this particular case, we're going to use this one here. It's 25 thousandths. Very simple tool. And what you do is you lay it right on top of your chain. Put it just like that. Hold it back in here. Don't hold it up front like this here. Hold it back in here. If the raker is not adjusted properly, you're going to see the top of the raker come up through the gauge. That means it's too tall. And what you do is you take your flat file that comes in the kit and you go right across that gauge, just like that, and file the raker down to the proper height, which again in this case is 25 thousandths. This is going to be 25 thousandths below the cutting edge of this cutter. And that's where you want it to be. That's the proper way of sharpening a chain. If these are too high, no matter how sharp that tooth is, it's not going to cut. And when these are too high, it's hard on the chainsaw, it's hard on the chain. A lot of times you'll see at the bottom of your cutter or your tie strap, very worn area. That's usually a sign, and your bar may be worn through there too. That's usually a sign that your rakers are too high. And there's no advantage in running them high. You want them at the proper height so the saw cuts the best that it can. A chainsaw really should cut through a piece of wood by its own weight only. If you have to stick the bar spikes into a log and then leverage the saw to try to get it to cut, and what you're making is sawdust, time to resharpen the chain. You may be asking how you determine what size file you use. That's a good way to figure that out. There's a couple of ways. So one is the box that the chain came in. If you look at that box, there's a wealth of information on it. This particular chain is 73 LGX 72. Now what does that mean? Well, to you, 73 LGX probably doesn't mean much. That's a stock number that Oregon uses. I know it happens to be 58 gauge and 72 drivers. But if you read down here, it's saying, you're showing a little picture of the drivers. That's the part that fits down inside the bar. There's 72 of them. That's the length of the chain. The next bit of information they're giving you is 58 thousandths. What does that mean? That's the thickness of the driver on the chain. That's the part of the chain that actually fits down in the slot of your bar. So the bar slot width is 58 thousandths. It's right over here. It's showing you a 7/32 file. So what do we learn here? I know you have 3/8 pitch because it says it right here. I know you got 58 gauge, and I know you've got 72 drivers. That's the size of the chain you need for your saw. So hang on to the box. Not only does it give you the size, the chain you need, but on the back, it gives you all the information you need to sharpen it. Don't throw the box away. I recommend hanging on to it. If you look at the back of the box for this style chain, it shows me that my filing angle is actually 25 degrees on this chain. That means I have to hold the holder at 25 degrees in relation to the bar or the chain. It's also showing me for this particular chain I need a 7/32 file. Another bit of information on this particular chain is I'm supposed to be filing with a 10-degree downward slope, or upward slope, depending how you look at it, as I'm filing. What they're saying there is, rather than holding the file guide straight across, I'm going to tip it down a little bit, 10 degrees. This particular guide actually has a tab on it that's bent at 10 degrees. So when that's parallel, I hold it down like this, I line up my lines here, and go across. Just like that. Another important thing you want to do before I finish is make sure your chain is tightened properly. You want proper tension on the chain while you are filing it. You'll know when your chain is properly tensioned when you can grab the bar with one hand, grab the chain with the other hand, and try lifting it out of the bar. You should be able to see just a little bit of light underneath the driver. The driver is the part of the chain that fits down the slot of your saw bar. If it comes out more than that, the chain is too loose. If you can't lift it that far out, it's too tight. Proper tensioning is very important. Again, I recommend you tension the chain prior to sharpening. Well, I think that's it for today. If you have any questions, and I know it's a little bit confusing, just give me a call, ask for Chuck. Hope to hear from you.